Lord's Day 39 begins the Catechism's examination of the second table of the law with the fifth commandment and says, what is God's will for you in the fifth commandment, which is, of course, honor your father and mother, that your days may be long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. And the answer is that I honor, love, and be loyal to my father and mother and all those in authority over me, that I obey and submit to them as is proper when they correct and punish me, and also that I be patient with their failings, for through them God chooses to rule us. All right, three quick things regarding Lord's Day 39. The first of them is that the Catechism, as it explains Lord's Day, or the fifth commandment, is very clear about the fact that this commandment is an umbrella commandment over an entire area, and that entire area is rightful authority. And that's why it adds into here not only that I honor, love, and obey, or be loyal to my father and mother, but all those in authority over me. And so it's revealing that a proper understanding about all these commandments, but particularly this one in this case, is that there's an entire area that this commandment is overseeing, and that there are various then rightful authorities that God has ordained in this world. So the chief one, and that's why the commandment is about that particular authority, is that of father and mother over children. But other rightful authorities are the church, as God has revealed in Scripture for believers, but also civil government. And then there are other various spheres. This is where the idea of sphere sovereignty comes in, that each sphere of life, so you have the family sphere, you have the church sphere, you have the society sphere, if you will, that is civil society that's regulated or overseen by the rightful authority of the state. Anyway, each of these then we are to properly submit ourselves to, and so it's broader than just this specific relationship of parents and children. That's the first thing. The second thing is, as I mentioned just a moment ago, that this particular relationship is the chief example in that area of life. And so that speaks very strongly about this relationship that God has ordained between parents and children, sort of the model for, or at least the preeminent example of rightful authority that God has ordained in our lives. And that one then begins right from the beginning of our lives. So the other aspect of that is that the way the Catechism writes this, when we read the words honor, love, and be loyal to, it immediately, of course, applies that to our parents, our father and mother, but then it says, and all those in authority over me, which means that we're being called to something more than simply obedience. We're being called to honor, love, and be loyal to each of these God-ordained authorities in our life, because, as the Catechism says, through them, God chooses to rule us. So in the civil sphere, God chooses to rule us through civil government, and so we need to recognize how important it is and how God has ordained them for that work. So too in the church, in terms of the leadership in the church, and of course in the family, and then also in business and in other spheres of life. And that means that in acknowledging their important role, we love them, not necessarily the warm, fuzzy kind of love, but we seek their good. We want them to do their work well. We try to help them as much as possible, and of course also then obey them in all things that they are given authority over. So with regard to the government, we don't obey them when they tell us to worship idols, because God doesn't give them that authority. They have specific authority for a specific area of life, and they are not to step outside of that. But as long as they remain in that, then we are to live that way. And so in the in the Reformation, one of the things that the Reformers made very clear, and even or before that Christians made very clear, was that we were the best citizens of an earthly kingdom, because we knew that it was God's will that in all things with regard to rightful authority in those spheres, we were to not just obey, but we were to seek the good and to honor those individuals genuinely so, not just by going through the trappings of what it looked like to honor them in the eyes of men. So Christians are to be the best children, to be the best citizens, to be the best, members of, participants in whatever sphere that is, because we recognize the reality of God's ordaining a particular authority in that area. The third really quick thing here is that the answer of the Catechism here reminds us that we need to be patient with them because they're not perfect. So we need to be patient with their failings. And what that means in any given context is going to depend on the situation, but we have to recognize that they are fallen human beings, even as we are, and so we don't, endlessly pick their work apart or find criticism about everything that they do. We err on the side of giving grace, and that's an important thing in every different level of or every sphere that we've talked about so far. Give the giving of grace for the leaders in that area, knowing that they're human beings and they're not going to be perfect. All right, those are 3 quick things then from Lord's Day 39.